Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the weekly Armchair Sports Talk Devil's Advocate. And I'm hosting, so I apologise. Well, tonight is going to be a good one. Very, very interesting show. Lots to discuss tonight. But of course, it's me, it's Reece, the host of the weekly Steelchair podcast. And of course, joined me by tonight, it's Callum Stone from Stretford Paddock. How you doing, buddy?
I'm all right, mate. How are you? Nice to be back.
Yeah, it's good to see you. It's good to see you. Hopefully get you back on the weekly Steelchair at some point as well. You've been missed on that enough, so need to
It's
get
been
you
a
back on
while,
it.
actually. To be fair, I've kind of, I've not been, I've had to kind of follow wrestling online really than watch it, just because I've just been busy and not been able to sort of catch the shows. But I've been following it and watching the Bloodline and stuff. But I'm sure we'll speak about that on another one.
Definitely will. And another one, but obviously tonight, purely United season today, we're going to be discussing. So, may as well touch on one question, really, because obviously I can see comments already from Richard. We'll be coming to your comments shortly. But I think the obvious question really is, what is your current thoughts on our season today?
Bad start. Happy at the moment, though. I think the progress that we can see from Ten Hag's quite clear to see.
Hello, trouble.
It's it's still early days, but you can see the embers of what he wants to do. The players are clearly buying into it. The signings he's made has obviously worked as well.
Yeah.
So I'm very happy, to be fair. I think the fact that we're still in with a sniff of the top four is really good.
Yeah.
I think the World Cup kind of came at a bad time, to be honest. We had a little bit of momentum. The players were gelling together, and obviously another issue we had is now gone. So I think I'm kind of looking. I've never been so excited for a League Cup game against Burnley in my life. But it should be
well to be excited by. That's the interesting part.
Well, yeah, it's a weird one with the World Cup, obviously, but I'm excited for the Premier League to get started again, and I'm excited for the Christmas period for loads of reasons. But football's obviously one of the biggest ones, so I'm ready for us to carry on, and hopefully we can push on. Obviously, with the Ronaldo thing, getting a striker in is imperative, and we'll speak about that later on. But I'm happy with what we've got so far, and looking forward to how we get on with the rest of the season, to be honest.
Yeah, same here. I'm just switching to the monitor so I can plug this in because I was on a wee watch along. So I was sitting on my couch earlier, on my sofa bed in couch mode, watching the game was just finished. So I'm switching to a much better view. But all in all, as well. So I completely agree. I think the way that we're going into the momentum certainly changed from the World Cup, and that has affected our performance. But in terms of what Ten Hag is trying to do, is there any parts to it where you feel maybe he could have made changes slightly early, or do you think the progression timing-wise has actually been very smooth and has benefited the way things have gone so far?
I think the transition into Ten Hag obviously had its hiccup right at the start with the two games at the start of the season, and I think people might have feared the worst. It's not like Twitter to overreact either, but I actually think it's kind of transitioned quite smoothly. I think any problems he's faced and dealt with really well. Ronaldo's situation obviously being the main one. So I'm quite happy with everything at the moment. He's going to make mistakes. It's going to happen at some stage, and it probably already has happened. But nothing particularly comes to mind where I can think, do you know what, he could have done better there. Maybe the odd early substitution, but nothing over the top that really sticks out with me. I don't know if you can think of anything. I can't really, off the top of my head, I actually think it's been really, really well done, and I think if it carries on, I can really see something special happening. And with the Glazers looking at selling, I think finally, because I've always been of the mind that United won't win anything serious again until they leave. And with the news coming out yesterday, that again we'll speak about later, I'm sure. But with the news coming out yesterday that they are looking at possibly moving on, and the way Ten Hag's dealt with so many situations, and the way the team seems to be playing, and the players that we already have, and any that we add on to the squad, I do finally think that maybe United are on the upwards trajectory, and I think it can finally happen for us. It's just credit to the manager and credit to the players to not allow any scandals and any outside issues get in the way, and hopefully it continues throughout the season. And I hope the World Cup doesn't kind of kill any momentum that they had.
Yeah, I hope so as well. So I'm just going to dive in as well for a couple of comments. So Richard obviously saying, a few of them big media outlets saying Ratcliffe means to bid $5 billion plus for out of control. He is the one that I've said all along that I want to become the owner. If it's
Rich,
not him,
just out of interest, can you put what media outlets they were? Because I've not seen that myself. So
there's a link. So the Mirror have done it. I know Ducker's done it as well. He's reported it.
I don't know a lot about these journalists, to be honest. I don't know if you know more, to be fair, Reece.
I know a few, but not a lot significantly. So I'm just hoping that we get some credible comes in. I know Ducker seems reliable to some, but I'm not 100% sure. I know Rach obviously put a comment in. Obviously, she's sister for another mister for me. Always good to me. So hi, Rach, and hello, Billy Talks Load of Bollocks. But good to see you, mate. Always been a good one to me and all. Evening, guys. And Rach, nice to see Reece playing wingman to Callum. I play wingman to absolutely no one. I play wingman to nobody.
Not the star anyway, Reece. It's fine.
Absolutely, I'm the star of the show, or a curse, according to Billy. But I'll leave that to you. All in all, I think that we will be coming later on towards the show. Obviously, the discussions regarding the Glazers. Get your comments in, guys. Get your questions in. Me and Callum are definitely more than happy to answer any and all questions tonight, especially about the season, particular games, or particular performances. Obviously, for me, I'm just happy that Garnacho's in the team. Like, he's one I've been raving about. I'm buzzing that he's finally more involved in the squad. So I'll be looking forward to that. Discussions about Marcus Rashford as well, how his season's changed. By all means, get the questions in for that. Spoke about highs, actually, and this is actually one I really like to ask about. Lisandro Martinez, for me, has been one of our outstanding players this season. Apart from maybe Casemiro or Eriksen, probably our best signing. But in terms of our defence as a whole, certain players have improved, certain players have maybe regressed a little bit. It's expected, but in terms of how our backline was last year, where it was Varane until he got injured playing with Maguire or Lindelof, now it seems to be Martinez predominantly as the centre-back. How comfortable are you with our defence now with him in the team? How comfortable and confident are you?
Fairly confident. I think with Varane getting injured again, it was a little bit of a worry. If I'm honest, we've probably. I'm just trying to get the goal difference up, and I think it's still 0, isn't it? If I've got that right.
Last, I think it was it not +1 last time? I think.
Let me just find it if I've got it here. So it was 0, and we've conceded 20 goals.
Yeah.
Liverpool have conceded 17 in 6th, 4 points behind us. Tottenham have conceded 21, 1 above us. Obviously, they've played a game more as well. So I think it's been good, and I think a consistent run's come. Obviously, I think a couple of games we've obviously struggled slightly. The game against Villa, where the 3 goals, we just didn't play very well at all. And it was a bit of a worry, I think. But I think we finally got a bit of consistency with the defence. I just think with Varane getting injured, it might have just put a bit of a spanner in the works a little bit. Hopefully, obviously, he's at the World Cup, so it couldn't have been too serious. I basically hope a lot of the players get through with no major injuries.
He didn't play as well in the opening game for France. He didn't necessarily have to, but he didn't come on. So that's actually a good sign as well.
Yeah, well, to be honest, I'd much rather not a single United player played at the World Cup, to be honest. But I'm happy with the defence. I think Lisandro Martinez coming in has been a bit of a blessing. And if I'm being completely honest, he's owed an apology by a lot of people in the media. It really bothers me when you see people that are genuinely paid to give their opinions say things like, "I wouldn't want him to be 5'9" and playing in my team," when he's actually got one of the best aerial dual rate wins in the league.
Exactly.
When you're a good centre back and you know how to play, it's just lazy punditry, I think, and it was repeated so many times from so many people, and I genuinely believe so many of those people said that nonsense because they wanted to just rile up a few United fans because they knew it'd get them clicks and keep them relevant.
And it had worked.
Has been brilliant, and Varane has been excellent this season as well. It's just the consistency and keeping it there, keeping them together. With more game time, I think it will get better. And I think Martinez is probably not even our best signing, but I'd probably put him as our player of the season so far. I don't agree really, but I don't really see a candidate that has beaten him. You know, Eriksen's obviously come in and done very well. Rashford's found his form again, but Martinez he's just been a breath of fresh air. He looks like he loves playing for the club, and I think it's something that the fans are just happy to see, to be honest.
So here's a question then, because this is what I'm thinking. Same to the live chat as well, and I know you've got a question, Billy. I'll be coming to your question very shortly. I would say player of the season, Martinez, best signing, Casemiro. Would you agree?
Would you say the best? How could the best signing be better than the player of the season when they were both new signings, though?
Like, I would say Martinez performance-wise has been fantastic. He's definitely improved our defence. But when you look at the midfield link we had previously, we didn't do very well until Casemiro actually started playing games. You saw the difference in how well Casemiro links between our centre-back pairing and the players ahead of him in advanced positions. I think if we hadn't started Casemiro in those games, we would not be where we are in the league. That's not because of how bad our defence is. Our defence is so much better with Martinez in it. But I look at the way that Casemiro has marshalled in front, screens the position really well, and he's able to transition the ball up and down, and he also protects our defence really well, which gives Martinez the ability to carry the ball as well. I just think Martinez is just on a completely different level in terms of his performances and what we need. But the signing of Casemiro has allowed him to get that extra freedom where he doesn't have to worry about having to go over and cover an extra position. That's why I would say Martinez player of the season, best signing, Casemiro. Because he's fat.
I think basically what you're getting at there is if McTominay or Fred were there, the Martinez performances wouldn't have been as high. Is that kind of
100%? Yeah, which is not detriment to Martinez at all. Which is not detriment to Martinez. It's just he would have had to do two different roles rather than just the one role we bought him for.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I think you'll probably go with that really. But the main thing is as well is Casemiro. We're not having to use two players to do one job anymore either. So with the whole Fred McTominay thing, we were having to play both of them to do one role almost because one of them couldn't do one role. Whereas now Casemiro's come in, done that one role, and then effectively it's allowed Eriksen the freedom to create the chances he had. And obviously I think Bruno's done really well this season as well. Actually, I think the stick he gets Bruno is ridiculous just because of that first season he had really.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying. I'd probably still say in terms of player of the season and signing the season, it'd have to be the same person because it's the same player. But
it's reasonable.
Casemiro's definitely up there. I think this is the thing though. But a lot of people were doubting Ten Hag's choices for signings for quite a while, to be fair. Well, I'll say a lot of people. It's probably mainly the board, I think, for a little while because it took so long to get him over the line. But it's kind of shown, and it's quite frustrating for me because if we'd have got these players before the season started, like everybody wanted, would we be sitting here now wondering why we're in fifth when we could have been? Losing to, was it Brentford and Brighton? I think it was.
Brentford 4-0 match day 2, and we lost to Brighton 2-1.
Yeah, 2-1 at home, wasn't it? So even if we picked 4 points from those two games, we'd have a game in hand on Tottenham, but be a point above them in the fourth spot. Yep. So it kind of makes it sort of that much more frustrating that these new signings and these new players that have come in that have ended up being shouts for player of the season, like we've said. They've come in, done brilliantly, and if we'd have got Casemiro per se in that first game or second game, we could have been looking at a completely different league table right now.
Yeah, we could have done.
I think it helps even more with the confidence of the players to be in that fourth spot. Obviously, we want to be higher than that, but with us being at the start of this transition under Ten Hag, being in fifth isn't terrible, but being in fourth is better, especially when the sort of number one goal for this season is getting back into the Champions League. So it just makes it that much more frustrating, really. But I mean, I'd have to go Matt. I think it's just the passion he plays with when he's on the pitch. It looks like he enjoys playing. It looks like he'd rather. The expression kind of comes from the olden days, I guess. But it looks like he'd rather die than let go than let a player run past him. And I think it's kind of the old-fashioned way of looking at it. But I love that.
Which is great.
Plays. Yeah, it's just a bit of a scrappy bulldog kind of way of playing.
I know he's not in the live chat, but I've said this in our weekly armchair group chat. I said this when Martinez got signed. This is how much I really like Martinez because I've watched him before for Argentina and I've watched him play for Ajax. I said in our group chat with confidence that Martinez is the next Jaap Stam. Like complete straight away, no second thought. I said Lisandro Martinez is Man United's next Jaap Stam. Complete confidence. Because he plays the exact same except he's Argentinian and he plays with the left foot, not right foot.
The compliment's pretty massive there, and I think in terms of the way he'd look at it, I'm sure he'd be really pleased by that. I hate comparing players to old players because obviously it's just a completely different time now, and I think
I try to think comparisons that make sense, whereas people are comparing players to a completely different stratosphere, like young players being compared to like Messi or Ronaldo. I'm not going to compare him to that because that's a totally different level. Whereas when I look at Jaap Stam, he's still, for me, the best centre-back I've seen play for Man United. He's still my favourite Man United centre-back. His aggressive play, his tenacity, his ability to carry the ball, the fact that you could leave him on his own against any striker and you know he's not going to get beat is why I've got that confidence in Martinez. That's why I put that fair comparison.
I think that's it like that. I've never personally compared him to old players, but I wouldn't ever disagree with that, to be fair. I think the main thing with that is Fergie kind of said it was probably his biggest mistake as United manager selling in because he ended up being brilliant for another 3-4 years, I believe it was. So
Lazio and Milan.
Yeah, was it Lazio we sold him to? It was. For some reason I thought it was into Milan, but
Lazio on a free, and then Milan went and won the Champions League with them.
Yeah, exactly.
Some good.
Yeah, so I think in terms of comparing him to Jaap Stam, I think he's probably a bit of a mix between Jaap Stam and maybe Rio Ferdinand. I think he's kind of that aggressive nature and the no-nonsense build of Jaap Stam, who was also good on the build, but on the ball, sorry. But Rio Ferdinand to me was one of the best centre-backs we've had on the ball.
Yeah, I would certainly agree with that.
And as like you were saying before with Casemiro, him and Casemiro have allowed the midfield to it's allowed the defensive midfield to transition to get forward faster, really, because they've allowed to break through the lines. Because Martinez has been able to play all these brilliant passes, Casemiro's allowed to find Eriksen, who's then allowed to progress the ball further up the pitch. So
that's what we need.
If you really want to compare him, I wouldn't just compare him to
one.
I'd bring like to Rio Ferdinand, even Steve Bruce, because Steve Bruce was very good on the ball as well. But Steve Bruce Steve Bruce was just a bit of an anomaly, really, when he's scoring 19 goals in the season as a centre back. So it's kind of hard to compare, really. This is why I find it hard to compare between generations, really, because football progresses and football moves on, and it's always a debate that will never get resolved, because as many United fans will turn around and go, George Best was the best ever to play, not Lionel Messi, or Diego Maradona was the best ever to play. The debate could go on forever and ever because nobody will ever know.
That's a fair comment. Actually, I do agree with that. I think that's very fair. Liam, good to see you. It says I think we'll finish the season strongly. So do I. 2 questions from Billy, and then I'm going to ask you about certain games in comparison to the season. I just want to get your thoughts on them. So the first question is: do you think the club is already sold? I have a feeling it's already a done deal already with a Dubai state. I don't think the club is sold yet, but I think, judging by recent reports and comments that are coming out, the likes, even I've seen today as well, which is bizarre. There's a tweet that came out today as well that even David Beckham's looking to partner with investors as well. But you've already got Inter Miami. I love you, Becks, but stick to Inter Miami. Let's just get somebody else. Although if he was a Man United owner, I would be well over the moon because everybody knows who's my all-time favorite United player. But I think it's between a Dubai state or Jim Ratcliffe, and I would. Either or would be fine with me. Either or. I just want to get your opinion on that question.
I was going to ask you that. How would you feel about Dubai or someone in sort of that part of the world buying Man United?
The thing is, right, and this is where confliction comes in, because obviously I've been slagging off Chelsea and I've been slagging off Manchester City for years. But when you look at ownerships, even though there's dubious acts involving the sponsorship money with the Champions League with Manchester City, but the one thing I will give them credit for is the amount of money they've actually physically pumped into the club behind the scenes as well, them reinvesting in their stadium, reinvesting in their training ground, improving their facilities, but also they've actually invested into that community area as well. They've actually invested.
Well, I don't live too far from it, and they really have to. I mean, it's still a bit of a shithole, but it definitely has improved over the years.
I love an owner like that, somebody who generally does care about the community side behind the club. Also, actively wants to get
that's where the argument and debate for it comes in, though, because the reason why they care so much and have put so much money in is because of the whole sports washing argument and the human rights argument of that part of the world.
Yeah.
I've slagged off City and now Newcastle, PSG with the FIFA documentary on Netflix, which I tell everybody to go and watch because it's brilliant. But morally, I'd have a really big issue with them buying United, and I've spoken out about it before. I'd find it really hard to go to Old Trafford knowing that they're our owners, because the reasons for them owning Man United would be to digress and distract people from what goes on in that part of the world. Now, I'm not saying we're perfect, and there's many other parts of the world that have to look at themselves as well. But I'm like the same with the issues with the World Cup at the moment. I'm finding it really hard to enjoy it as much as I feel like I probably would have done with previous years.
Yeah,
I want the Glazers out, of course I do, but we've also got to be careful who then comes in. People have got to do their due diligence and basically go, look, we don't want you either, kind of thing, because morally, I'd much rather Jim Ratcliffe buy it than Abu Dhabi or than somewhere in Qatar, or And I think morally, I'd feel like that. But I wonder if the wider football world and the wider football fan base actually care about that in football. Because at the end of the day, most people who probably go to Old Trafford go to the pub, have a beer with the mates, including me, who does this, probably just care about that and care about the team winning. They probably aren't really bothered about the whole political side of football, which I personally think politics should be a big part of football. But I don't think the wider football world care, or the wider football fan base of Manchester United care.
Yeah.
So if they were to buy it, a lot of people probably would go, do you know what? Yay, we got rid of the Glazers. Personally, I'd rather Jim Ratcliffe buy us than those. Because I can't really answer the question. I'd rather Abu Dhabi than the Glazers, because both of them are awful. Both of them are awful and awful and awful. So it's hard to answer that question.
I think that's a very fair question to ask. I know Billy's got another question about Memphis, and I love Memphis, but it didn't work the first time, but I think it would work the second time. I'll come to that question in a minute, but just because you're talking about selling and value, this is actually a very valid comment. The biggest issue is whoever buys us needs to invest about 500 million minimum to get us back to a decent stadium, training ground, facilities. I think Glazers will outvalue Sir Jim. They certainly could outvalue him. They are wanting 5 to 5.5 billion minimum. And it's annoying that they're going to make a profit on the sale of the club with the leveraged debt that they actually put on it. It's disgusting. They are, from what I keep hearing as well, they are not going to clear the debt as well. They're going to ensure that whoever buys the club, they will cover the debt as well, which is wrong. They should cover the debt and then just make the sale, which it's not going to happen in that sense. But I don't even think 500 million minimum is enough. I actually would go double that. I would say 1 billion, because the amount of investment just to catch up to Tottenham Stadium, or like as well. Like Man City's probably got the best training facilities, the best stadium built development just to look at in the facilities is probably Tottenham's in the league anyway.
I'd completely agree with that. Because it's not 500. Well, and to be fair, Billy, I know you said 500 million minimum.
I think that's a fair, reasonable start, but I think double that.
I think you're probably looking at 500 million pound for probably the land around Old Trafford and the stadium. The stadium itself is probably going to be close to $1 billion, I think. So, I mean, going on the Glazers comment, you said there that they're not going to pay off the debt. The Glazers literally borrowed £500 million to buy Manchester United and leveraged that debt onto the assets of the club.
Exactly.
They have literally milked the club dry with dividends and interest rates, interest on the debt, taking money out for themselves, all so many different variables of what they've done. And then they get to make billions in profit and walk away without paying off that debt. It's an absolute scandal that was ever allowed to happen in 2005. And Ed Woodward is one of the main and culpable people that has done that to this football club. So when people say, "Oh, well, he did okay" or whatever, he was a good businessman. And to be fair, I've been guilty of saying that about him before. But when you genuinely peel it all back and think about what he's actually done to the club, he was a terrible businessman and a terrible football man. Put that together, and you then put him in charge of Manchester United. The damage he did to the football club in the last, 10 years in particular, but 17 years since 2005 when he was a broker with JP Morgan, has been probably one of the worst things that's ever happened to Man United. And my worry is, as much as Ten Hag is doing well, and if the Glazers do leave, I do think that we could actually get back to the top. It won't be a quick fix. It'll be still a few years, and I don't think a lot of fans have the patience for that. So
they'll expect immediate.
Genuinely patient. It's I think it was like the Swiss Ramble account on Twitter. He broke down everything, but they've wasted billions on transfer fees, took money out in dividends from a business, let's say, that's at an operating loss, which would never happen in any other business in the world, only at Man United.
Yep,
they've taken billions out in interest rates. The debt is now bigger than what it was when they first bought the club. And now they're allowed to sell the club for, I don't know, let's say 7 or 8 times what they bought it for by leveraging the debt on, and don't even have to pay that debt back. It's ridiculous. Genuinely ridiculous.
This is my comments about I think about Abramovich as an owner of Chelsea. Yes, he made like cutthroat decisions on managers and jobs, etc. But the fact that before he even sold the club, he actually paid off the debt as well is why he is one of the best Premier League owners of all time. Yes, he might have been difficult to deal with, but he's one of the best owners for the fact that he actually physically cared about Chelsea, even when he wasn't allowed back in the UK.
Again, though, Reece, I tell you what, let's look at it from a genuine football standpoint.
Yeah, because I'm leaving out the pure political.
In terms of a football owner, he probably was. Of course, he was. He cared about Chelsea. He made tough decisions, which to be fair, I didn't agree with a lot of the time, but I suppose over time they ended up working because they won a couple of Champions Leagues and stuff, and many league titles and cups and stuff. It probably progressed them to the biggest club in London, which was always Arsenal. I'd probably say now it's Chelsea because of the trophies they've won, but. If you add the other stuff to it, he wasn't a good owner because of the reasons he was doing that for Chelsea. The reason he cared about Chelsea was because of the other stuff that he did that he didn't want talking about. This is why people don't want politics in football. I always disagree with that. But as a football owner, he obviously was a very good one. Because again, with the City owner thing, you could say as a football owner, they've been very good. They've still not won the Champions League, but as a football owner, they have been very good. It's just why they've been very good and why they've done what they've done, and that's the thing that I can't ignore.
I think the best pure owner in the Premier League, like in terms of like just pure, had no outside interest. It was purely for the club, genuine care, and you could tell was the Vishai, the guy that owned Leicester before he passed.
Go on, try and say second name, Reece. Go on, I beg you.
I need to actually look up his second name before I even give it a try. I'll gladly give it a go. I'll probably butcher it anyway, but I'll give it a go. Vishai Sriva Daprana Prabha. I can't do it.
There you go.
Sriva Dana Prabha. That's probably the best I'm going to get just by looking at it. Vishai Sriva Dana Prabha. It's so fucking hard to pronounce. Like, that is a hard name, but still, I think in terms of just a pure owner, I think he was the best one in that sense because he genuinely cared about Leicester, and you can tell with the fact that since COVID and everything, they've lost so much money, they've pulled out completely. That's why Leicester are bloody struggling. But in terms of just a pure likable owner, he is probably that one. It's a shame that he's no longer living, because I think he would have done. There's no way Leicester would be in such a state if he was still alive. I don't think that's not his son's fault. It's just the money was purely him. Ken, comment for you, by the way. I don't know if you've seen it. This is from Jake saying that you're doing really well. It's good to see you. Nice comment to make.
I've actually put on a couple of pounds again, about £3, because I've ruined my neck, so I've not been able to get to the gym very much. But I appreciate that, mate. Thanks for that.
Unlucky. And Billy's comment about this is why Dubai steak probably the only one that could buy. Yeah, that's possible. Liam's saying they destroyed potential transfer windows. Yep, 100%. And I did say I would come back to Billy's question on Memphis. It didn't work the first time, But I thought it was unfair to just kick him out of the club the way Mourinho did. I understand it's what Mourinho does. If you don't fit his club now, he will get rid of you. I think if he had stuck around persisted with it, Memphis could have been a player that actually we could have had, like, benefited us, because he does play the style we want. I think he's fantastic in a central role out wide. If we got him back through the middle, it would actually be brilliant to have him in that option. But I think I wouldn't just bring Memphis to the club. If we're going to bring Memphis back to the club, ideally we should bring in Gakpo. We need the two. We can't just have the one.
I think the Gakpo thing. I think we're seeing in the World Cup now. He's obviously doing well, and Ten Hag obviously wanted him in the summer. I think there's better options, and if we were to go Gakpo, I think we need Gakpo plus another forward, and I think there's better options than Depay. Personally,
I mean, Lautaro Martinez or Osimhen for me personally.
Yeah, or maybe even Ivan Toney from Brentford. But the problem is, good strikers cost a lot of money, and the number one signing that I want at Man United next summer is Jude Bellingham. If we were to find Jude Bellingham and a striker next summer, I think I'd be happy, to be honest.
That is big,
massive outlay, but I think it would be good for us. If we could maybe add a right back as well, I think I'd be happy. 3 signings next summer, right back, Bellingham and Osimhen or Ivan Toney, I'd be really chuffed with.
Yeah, I think that's reasonably fair. I know, but he's still a better player. I think Lautaro Martinez actually would be the wiser option, though. I just like Osimhen. I just think he's a brilliant, fast player, really good hold-up play. But Martinez, like, the way recoveries from attacking positions is impressive.
Well, speaking about what you said before at the start about how the season's gone, I think everyone expected more from Martial, and unfortunately, his injuries have come at the worst time. The next 6 months, I think, for Martial at Man United are critical. If he carries on with his injury record and it's the way it is, I think it would probably next summer be one of those where we go, do you know what? It just didn't end up working out, which would be a shame, because obviously all the stories around him at the start and how good he was going to be and stuff. But I think it'd be one of them where I think the patience had probably wore out with him. So 6 months is pretty massive for him, I think.
Absolutely. And I said I was going to ask you about low points throughout the season. So there's
he's frozen. Still there, Reece. Looks like we'll be taking a quick break. Are you back, Reece?
Hate when this happens.
There you go. You're back.
Hate when my connection goes. It's never the best.
Yeah. You're back now. Go on. I know what you're saying.
Am I back? Tell me, people. Hopefully I'm back. Callum, still hear me?
I can hear your voice and stuff, but your face is a little... There you go. You seem to be working all right now.
You still hear me, yeah?
Yeah.
Sorry, I hate when my connection does that. The asking price is 5 billion.
I think the assumption is probably from Chelsea went for 4 billion. It looks like Liverpool are going to be going for something similar. And I think the argument is United are bigger than both of those clubs, so the Glazers want more. The problem is, I'd argue, we are the bigger club, I think, but surely the debt on the club and the infrastructure that needs improving makes United worth a similar amount to the others, but the Glazers are trying to maximise what they can get.
We're valued as well by the Rain Group, who did price Chelsea as well. It's the exact same group that's done it.
Yeah,
and they are very reliable,
really, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I genuinely think the Glazers have been looking at selling us since the summer. I genuinely think the protest this time worked, but according to Piers Morgan, it was all because of his interview. I mean, the guy really is a scumbag, isn't he? But which I think why I struggle to forgive Ronaldo for that interview, really, because of who he did it with. It was if he really wanted to do something like that, he could have gone to so many better people. So it's I can't stand Piers Morgan, and it really is depressing that that's who he went to, because the guy is a genuine scumbag who shouldn't be famous.
You're not wrong.
But yeah, that's just the way it is.
Yeah. I do agree, and I do agree with what Billy's saying as well. If Rashford had Martial finishing, would be a great position. Also, if he had Martial's confidence of holding up the ball. If he could hold up the ball like Martial as well, he'd be a complete attacker. I think that's the only thing that's lacking for him. But he's had a brilliant season, though. Rashford, he's had a brilliant season. But I think that's the only thing that's lacking in him, which is unfortunate. But that's happens with some players. You can have it. Some of them just don't. But it's how you adapt to your strengths, and that's what our team's doing. Before my connection froze, I was going to ask you about two games in particular in terms of highs and lows. Obviously, one of them was obviously the 4-0 to Brentford, because that performance was absolutely abysmal. And then the other one, just because it completely changed our Europa League campaign, was the 1-0 defeat to Real Sociedad. So in terms of lows, I want to ask you about them. I think they are the genuine lows of our season so far, but based off those games compared to where we are, do you think we've learnt since, or do you think, though, and actually, to be fair, even Aston Villa as well, in the league game, that was really poor. I'll include the Aston Villa game as well, because obviously we should have done a lot better, but those 3 games in particular, do you still think we'll see more of them this season, or do you think the second half of the season we will learn from that and it shouldn't happen?
I think we'll probably see more of them, and I think we'll see. It's more the performances that offend me than the results, to be honest. Like those the Brentford game was just absolutely terrible and genuinely made me worry, to be honest. But the 1-0 against Sociedad was just, we didn't play great, but we didn't deserve to lose. And the penalty that got given against us was quite literally because Martinez had an arm. So it really should have been a 0-0 kind of game, really. It was a bit of a naff game, but I don't think we deserved to lose, and we definitely didn't deserve the penalty to go against us. So it's annoying that cost us what it did, really, because now we're having to play Barcelona in February. But
true.
The Brentford game was shocking, and I think the Aston Villa game was one of those as well, because the performance was really bad again, and I think we'll probably see that a few times again this season, because we are going to see I think we went on. I've got the results here. We won
9 games unbeaten.
Was it 9 games unbeaten? With quite a lot of wins in that as well. So that's not a bad record. But then every now and then there was a bit of a shocking performance. So it will happen again this season. But that's part and parcel of the transitional period that we're going through with another new manager. I feel like I've said that a lot over the past 10 years. But this time it really genuinely is a transitional period, because we have a manager who has a genuine style of play that he wants his players to buy into, and it seems like they are. But it also seems to be the case that Ten Hag's willing to adapt as well to the players he's got and to the game that we play. And if that's the case, we will see it again and again and again. But as long as the games that we're winning, we're seeing genuine progress as well. I'm happy to take those bad performances. I'm not happy, obviously, but I think we'd be more willing to accept them than in previous years, where like last season, where it just looked like the players didn't care. So we will definitely see it again this season. Who against, I don't know. It kind of depends on what Man United team turns up on the day. But I don't think that the lows of this season have been rubbish, but we've dealt with them okay by bouncing back and the team showing a kind of personality and being able to get the win in the following game. So I'm happy with what's happened so far. I can kind of deal with the lows of this season because I think they were probably expected, because we knew what we were going to be dealing with.
Yeah, absolutely. And call me here by Jarvis, right? I do agree. I think that's very fair. I would, the asking price definitely is about 5, but like I would say it will be more, just purely because of the nature of the club. I do completely agree with you. I think you're spot on that regards. Funnily enough, I actually want to ask, because obviously it is now, well, it is 17 unfortunate years. They are finally going. For you, and the new owner does come in swiftly. For me, obviously, I want the facilities in the stadium to be fully worked on. But in terms of the club itself, are there any other changes you physically would make around the club?
In terms of what?
Say internally. So like management as well, like above the manager, helping him out. Because personally, I don't think the management team above Ten Hag is good enough. Like, I don't trust I don't trust the directors. I would rather I would much rather have an elite level of director of football. I don't trust what we have at all.
John Murtough. Yeah,
I don't trust
to
him.
tell you the truth, mate, I don't know enough about John Murtough to judge him. I know he's done a lot with the women's team, and it seems to have worked really well for them. But I'm not an expert on the women's team, so I couldn't say exactly what he's done. I think in terms of the director of football, John Murtough, I think he's probably done enough to stay in his role. But Gary Neville said it loads of times. Man United should have the best in class in
100%. Yeah, it's always in my head.
United are the biggest club in the world to us. You know, the only genuine argument you can have with that is the likes of Real Madrid.
Yeah.
And Real Madrid are revamping their stadium to make it the best in the world. So United should be doing the same. So putting the infrastructure to a side and going internally in terms of personnel in the club, I'd probably go with, we do need another director of football, not replace another one, because City have got 3 or 4. Man United have got 4 or 5.
I like this shout by Billy. Like Edwin van der Sar's a great shout, but I'd go one further. I'd go to PSG and I'd take Luis Campos off PSG.
Luis Campos would be a great shout. I think Paul Mitchell coming in as well would be another one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What's he called? Is it Monchi?
Monchi.
I know he's had a lot of experience.
Yeah.
And a lot of good things to say about him.
That 100% agree.
In terms of personnel, though, I was getting onto this. Richard Arnold needs to go. Anybody part of the Glazer part of the regime, I think needs to go, because ultimately they have been part of what's happened. They have overseen a lot of rot and a lot of bad things that have happened in terms of debt, in terms of terrible decisions with transfers, in terms of the infrastructure being left. All of that has been overseen by all these other directors, and they need to leave. They need to be part of the regime that gets cleared out as well. The Chelsea have kind of done something really, haven't they, where they sacked everybody and came in and did that and replaced everybody. I don't think United need to do massively the same. I think there's a few people in there that we definitely could, like John Murtough, I think was worth keeping. I'm actually of the ilk that Man United need to look at people who have been involved in the club in the past. The argument when Solskjaer was there that it was a job for the boys. No, it's not. Like the likes of Rio Ferdinand coming in, or Eric Cantona, or even Gary Neville, people like this. Those kind of people coming into the club, people that know the club inside out and know behind the scenes and how it works and know what it felt like to be a player for the club. All of that means a lot, and they should be involved in decision making. They shouldn't be the primary decision maker, but being part of those decisions, having the fans involved as well, all of that should be involved. This is why I worry about like the likes of Abu Dhabi coming in as well, because I don't think they would have all that. They'd have it on face value. They wouldn't actually do it, because having it at face value looks great. Whereas I don't think they'd want to give up that kind of control. So a few personal changes would be needed in terms of the directors, probably from the commercial side. I think that would need to be completely changed. In terms of the football side, I think we just need to add to it, not take away from it and replace. I'd be happy to just add to it. So the likes of Van der Sar coming in, if we had that role available for him, the likes of the Paul Mitchells coming in who'd add on to the recruit. Because Darren Fletcher, people slate him, but I'd keep him in the club. There's no reason for him to go.
I think there's some people you can keep. I just don't think he should be in the top. Like, I get your point. I completely agree. I'm just saying there's certain people I would keep in the club that are worth it. I'm just saying, like, John Murtough, I would keep him in, but I wouldn't have him as the main director of football. I would give it to somebody who actually understands the role and what we need for it. I would keep him within some sort of role that benefits him. But like director of football, for me, I would give that to Campos or Van der Sar. Like, I would give like Van der Sar the chief executive officer role that he uses at Ajax. It's the same role that Woodward used. And I would just give the director of football role to Campos. That's 2 strong positions by 2 strong people.
The Van der Sar thing as CEO would be perfect, really, because he's got a degree in that, if I'm right as well.
It's what he does at Ajax as well, and Overmars was his director of football.
He's been brilliant. Yeah, exactly. So having him in the likes of like a Campos or a Paul Mitchell involved, as well as John Murtough, who knows the club, then you have Darren Fletcher there, and all of that would be a brilliant addition. And we need to look at bringing that in, because it would make it the best in class. So
that's what we need.
Personal changes, I'd add to it. In terms of the commercial side, I'd completely replace.
You know what else as well? This might sound a bit dodgy considering who he worked for, but I would actually look at the Edwards guy that actually did, funnily enough, used to work for Liverpool. Because he is
I think
highly rated.
there was actually rumours we were going for him, I believe.
I would bring him in some capacity, because he even though it's a scum club, what he actually did do for them is what United have lacked for years. I think if we had somebody working beside Van der Sar, potentially if we got him in, if we got a Campos, these are all theoretical. If we got Edwards in though as well, like considering what he did for Liverpool, keeping them at the top level with the likes of Jurgen Klopp for years, he's gone, and look at them now. They are struggling to find somebody, like, in terms of replacement, that actually understands the vision of their club. We got him in. That's our vision already expanded. I would be happy with if Michael Edwards came in. I think that'd be a fantastic coup, especially if he came in, say, when we played Liverpool, when he was sitting in the stand and he celebrated if we won 1-0, for example. It'd be pure comedy. But I think that type of position, because he's got that experience, it would be a great one for us. Also, Maisie, good to see you, beautiful. Glad to have you in here. There is one thing I wanted to ask, because you spoke about poor performances, spoke about games where realistically we shouldn't have lost. Going to the highs. So obviously some results stand in mind. Our best 90 minutes is 100% Tottenham. The most exciting result was probably Arsenal, that 3-1 win. But for me, the most important and best result all season we've had so far was 100% that win against Liverpool, because we hadn't beat them in 5 years in the league. For you, would you agree, or is there any other games for you?
In terms of what it meant and how it felt like to beat them, yeah, definitely. Because I remember watching that game, and I bet you were probably the same as me. After the start of the season we had, we were still really unsure of how Liverpool were going to kind of decline if they have done this season. But in terms of at that stage of the season and how poorly we played in those two games, I think everybody expected us to get absolutely walloped. I think everyone expected like a 3-4, 5-0 drubbing. And then when we went out and played as well as we did and beat them 2-1, I think that was kind of, that was the start of the players kind of showing the personality and the spirit that came into the club. I think Ten Hag, it showed a willingness from Ten Hag to adapt to the players that he had at his disposal. And it was, it's always great beating Liverpool, isn't it? So I think that was kind of I know there'd only been a couple of games, but I think it kind of turned our fortunes around quite a lot. And the fact that we did it against Liverpool was obviously a really big plus. I'd go 100%. That was the highest part of our season. Performance-wise, I'd probably say the Tottenham game, because we really did dominate them. We were too good for them. And considering the form that Tottenham are in and how well Conte was doing at that point, or had done throughout the season, we really did play them off the park. So performance-wise, I'd say the Tottenham game, but just in terms of as a fan, beating Liverpool was always the best.
Yeah, 100%. And based on that result as well, obviously the break for the season, for the World Cup, if you had to rate the season so far out of 10, and also if you had to rate the manager out of 10 currently, and same for the live chat as well, what would you give him? At the moment, I think for me personally, I would give both 7s. I think that seems
I'd probably go 7 in terms of the season, and maybe 8 for Ten Hag in terms of how he's got the team playing, how he's dealt with the tricky situations that have been put on him behind the scenes by the likes of Ronaldo and various protests, and obviously the terrible owners he has to work for. I'd probably give Ten Hag an 8. So 7 and 8, I think I'd go with. But what you said is probably agreeable as well, really.
And then Billy's comment there, Spurs was the best performance. Even Fred looked like prime Dunga. Good comparison. Love that one.
Great comparison.
And we'll be coming up to Ronaldo very shortly, so that's going to be interesting, considering obviously the January transfer window is coming around the corner. But just because of January itself, we don't know if United are going to spend. We don't know if United are going to actually do anything. There's mixed reports that United are going to spend. They're going to bring an attacker. We're looking at attackers. Predominantly Cody Gakpo is the favourite. There's also talk that United aren't going to make moves in January. Do a flip side. I'm going to ask you one of each. If United sign an attacker, where do you think United finish? If United don't make any moves, where do you think we end up at the end of the season? Bear in mind, we're still in the Premier League, and also We still got the Europa League. We still got at least one competition to enjoy. Actually, no, we still got both. But in terms of that, like the only competition we're physically out of is the Premier League. But in terms of finishing on a high, we sign somebody in January. Where do you think we finish? And how do you think our season goes? We don't sign someone the same turnout.
I think if we sign a striker in January, I think we'd probably finish. I'll tell you what, let me actually have a look at the league and see how far off we are. So we have a game in hand. So let's say we win that game in hand, which is Leeds. If we win that game in hand, we'd be on 32 points right now. Let's say we played that game tomorrow and we won it, we'd be on 32 points. That'd be the same as City, who also have a game in hand. So we'd be 3 points behind City, and we'd move to probably fourth.
Yeah.
But be higher than Newcastle. We'd basically go over third and fourth, I think. I think we'd finish third with a striker, depending on the quality of striker we bring in. With the money we've saved on Ronaldo's wages, because I believe we've not paid his contract off, he's mutually agreed to go, right, I'll waive that money. Now,
yeah.
That's correct, the money we've saved on his wages is massive. So there's no reason for us to not go get a striker. My only worry would be if the Glazers are actually going to sell the club, they're not going to free up any funds within the club for more players because they're going to want to take it themselves. Which is why I kind of think we won't sign a striker. We need one, but we won't sign one because of them. Because it's always why we struggle with transfer targets.
Yeah.
The other thing I'd say is it's obviously very hard for the top four this season. We've got the likes of, obviously Arsenal have been doing really well, but then you've got City, Liverpool, Chelsea, Tottenham, ourselves, and now Newcastle in the mix. That's 7 teams fighting for 4 positions. And the way Newcastle are actually playing, I wouldn't be surprised if they genuinely do get the top 4. And
they've got the probably best performing midfielder in the league right now in Bruno Guimaraes. He's a player I can't believe we didn't bother for. It's phenomenal.
Not even us didn't bother for him. How nobody bothered to try and go for him is baffling, because that guy is brilliant. And for the money that they signed him for, he would have done I think if we'd have got him, we wouldn't have signed Casemiro, to be honest. And I don't think we'd have been that bothered. That's how good he seems to be.
Mm-hmm.
And correct me if I'm wrong, I think he's is he 23, 24? He's quite a young player.
23 years old.
Yeah, so
and he's the best midfielder in the league this year.
That would have been our midfield problem sorted for a while.
Him and Casemiro would have been the best midfield in the Premier League, for fuck's sake.
Yeah, well, exactly. So, yeah, I think Newcastle will be there. So, my other worry would be if we were to go far in the Europa League with no extra striker signing, it would be the hindrance of getting Champions League next year. Because if we do, it depends if we choose, really. If we can get both, great. But I personally think the Europa League actually could be a better route to getting into the Champions League next year. We get that striker in, I think our chances of winning it are a lot higher. We can't go into the second half of the season with Martial, Garnacho, Rashford, Sancho, Anthony. We need an out-and-out striker who can play how Ten Hag wants and who can sort of elevate us that little bit more. And if we do it in January, it just means there's a little bit less to do in the summer as well. It means next season it just kicks on that progression that little bit quicker. So we really do need to get a striker. Gakpo could be good, but I believe he can play across all of the front line. So and he'd probably be a little bit cheaper, I reckon, than other targets. So it could be him and another striker would be great as well, I think. But that second striker will probably be more likely to come in the summer, because you don't really tend to get top quality players in January. It's very rare. It can happen, but it is rare.
Yeah. Here's a question. This goes to the live chat, and I'm not joking. This is a serious question. I'll bring up your comment in just a second, Jarvis. Personally, this summer, I know I've said Osimhen, but I would take Lautaro Martinez in the summer. I think he's brilliant for Inter Milan, brilliant for Argentina. He fits us well, and he's 24.
Unbelievably expensive, though.
Yeah, Vlahovic is another one. But here's another serious question. Now, people are going to think this because it sounds a bit funny, but considering what he's actually done, he's already played the Premier League for a team that's absolute garbage. They're no longer in the league. He did play really well for PSG, and he's Bayern's frontman.
Don't say
I know this sounds funny, but I actually think if you need somebody who plays up front as a hold-up player, even if it's on a free and it's till like the end of the season, or even if it's for an extra year, as a backup, not a starter, but at least till the end of the season, would you at least consider Eric Choupo-Moting? And that is a serious question. Consider forget the Stoke Motings. So forget Stoke Moting. Think of Bayern and PSG Choupo-Moting for what he's done the past couple of years.
I mean, I'd take his agent more than him, to be honest. But I don't know enough about him. What I have seen of him, he's been a little bit comical. I think we should be looking a bit higher than him. If we want a cheap option, then this is what I mean. When they become very cheap or come on a free, the risk to reward factor is, if it doesn't work out, it's not a big issue.
Oh no, I would not a chance.
I wouldn't get a card. Good God, no.
No,
but when you get players on a free like that, and who does seem to perform for Bayern, the risk to reward factor is fairly low, so there's not really a lot to lose. So I kind of get the question. Personally, I think we should be looking at something higher than that. But I see why you've said it. Why would you say it's a good possibility, that, or would you go?
I think, considering the fact, like, in terms of like, I agree with Jarvis in terms of, like, you strengthen our squad in our first 11. But when you look at what he's done for Bayern and PSG in recent years, he was scoring decisive goals for them when the so-called big guns weren't doing anything. He was getting those decisive goals. I think if players, for example, like where we can't afford to rely on Bruno all the time, or Anthony can't score every game, Rashford won't score every game. Even if Choupo-Moting came in and scored like 10 goals, but those could be 10 goals that could decide our season, or could win us a trophy, give us that extra confidence. I would still say long-term, get a number 9 like Lautaro or even Vlahovic from Juventus if we could, or something along those lines. There's a long shout. I think he's fantastic.
Vlahovic should have gone for before he went to Juventus.
He's brilliant. I think there's a line around that where that long-term striker, if we got Choupo-Moting as, say, a backup who will get you like 10 goals that'll be decisive, and we don't make a loss on him either because we brought him in on a free, I would not be opposed to that. I can see why Billy's mentioned Icardi, because Icardi was brilliant at Inter Milan, but he brings so much baggage, unwanted baggage that we've just got rid of. In that sense, I don't want a repeat.
Yeah, I'd go with that. To be fair, as a backup, I actually don't think it'd be a bad shout, I guess. I still think even as a backup, we could be looking at better. But yeah, I can see why you've gone with that, to be fair, mate.
And I can see why that's why Billy mentioned Memphis Depay earlier on as well, because he's come along leaps and bounds compared to what he was before. He's come on leaps and bounds. I think he came to United now, it would work. But we have to get somebody in like who's ready to go. Even Jonathan David from Lille, but it depends on how much they want. It's difficult.
Yeah, I mean,
cheap option. He is, but it's difficult. McNeil's a good shout, but I think I would rather wait till the end of the season and in the summer integrate McNeil in. I think if we integrate McNeil in now, where our seasons are so decisive, put all that pressure on him, he crumbles. I would hate to see that.
We've got to really be careful with the younger players, because we've thought, like, I think the Elanga thing as well. The Elanga's got quite a lot of abuse from fans.
I think that's why Garnacho's been smart with how he's been used.
Yeah, exactly. Because I don't necessarily think Elanga was even ready, really, but throwing him in was because of other issues that we had at the club that I don't really want to mention. But he came in when he probably wasn't ready. I'd argue he probably could have done with a loan this summer. But not getting all of the players that we wanted, I guess. I know Man United spent a lot, the Glazers didn't. We didn't. We've rushed a few players who were quite young in too quickly, I think, and with the fan base that we seem to have, especially online, I worry for the younger players. So I wouldn't put McNeil in yet. I wouldn't be completely against it, but I'd just be more wary about it. I'd love to see, ideally, I'd love to see him get a chance, but I thought he would have had it by now. So my theory suggests that maybe this season Ten Hag thinks it's just a bit too quick for him as well, because there's many players in the U team that could get a shout. The likes of obviously Hannibal should be not too far away now, but is it Kobe Manu or something? I think that's his name.
He's amazing. Yeah, Kobe Manu. I like him
as well. So there's plenty in the U setup that
Isaac as well.
Door at the minute. Yeah, that's what I mean. There's plenty knocking on the door that aren't probably far away, but we've just got to be careful how we manage them, really.
You're right, Billy. No, you're completely spot on, and that's fine. That's why I would rather just get a senior pro and then wait till next summer and then integrate Manil properly for pre-season and let him go in that way. I think that'd be better for him. But you're right, we cannot lay our hat on Martial. As good as he is, and he has been good for the club, at times also when he gets injured, he comes back, he's so ineffective, and that really hampers us. We can't afford that. But no, I completely think you're spot on. I think there's different arguments we can have throughout the season about who we could invest, who we couldn't invest, who we could use, who we can't use. We've got to realistically think about it from. It's not just about thinking about the heart, but thinking about a logical way as well. That's something that we can't afford to lose sight on. There is obviously we'll probably go for another 10, 15 minutes. I'm enjoying it. I always love talking to Callum. What I wanted to ask you as well now is he has now left the club. It's only fitting that we discuss this. I'm not going to discuss the interview because frankly, I've already done that. I'd rather just not discuss it. I just want to talk about Ronaldo, the player. Since he's came back, I know we spoke about it before because we've done a stream or two before about Ronaldo when he returned, and it was quite a while ago. But since then, overall impact on the team, on the club itself, did it work for you?
Last year it probably did. Obviously he scored a lot of goals. It's really hard to answer that because, to be honest, it probably didn't work, really, did it? Especially in terms of the league position. Mm-hmm. And the argument was obviously always hanging over it even last year that was the team better without him. Yeah. Because it felt like he obviously scored 24 goals across the season in all competitions. But do you know, honestly, it probably United were probably better without him, really, especially this season. I personally think he can't. I don't think as his ego and the man that he is, he can't handle that. He can't handle the fact that his age has caught up with him, because the way he's disrespected the club, when in reality nobody's disrespected him. Ten Hag hasn't disrespected him. He just hasn't. That was just rubbish. It was nonsense. So it probably did work, and it probably didn't work, I should say. But from a nostalgic point of view, as a football fan and a Man United fan, I'll always be grateful that I got to see him again as an adult. And I'll always be grateful that I got to watch him score a hat-trick in front of my own eyes in the stadium. It's something I'll tell grandkids in 40 years' time. You know, he's the kind of player who you will tell stories about. And ultimately, as much as the dust probably hasn't settled in terms of the fact that he's had to leave Man United the way he has, and the fact that he's left Man United because he's done an interview, because he spat his dummy out, because he couldn't handle the fact that his age had caught up with him. Mm-hmm. Right now, it does feel a little bitter and a little bit of an unforgivable thing. But I reckon in 10 years' time, the dust would have settled, and I think everyone will think back at him as a Man United player and think, do you know what, he was an icon. And I think that's how I'll feel in the future. I think I'll forget the interview. I think I'll forget all that because I forget what Rooney did. You know, I really fell out with Wayne Rooney in terms of how he sort of conducted himself a couple of times. Whereas now I don't care. He's a legend of Man United, and I think he's great. I think the way he's handled this situation has been so awful that the fact there was no other way of him not being sacked, and that's exactly why he's done the interview. He spat his dummy out, wants to leave the club, and gone, right, I'm going to do it in the worst way possible. Look, there was some points he made in that interview that were very relevant and really need to be addressed. And obviously with the Glazers announcement of him being sold, looking to sell, it is great. But I think what's really important to recognise is that isn't because of Cristiano Ronaldo. Cristiano Ronaldo went on that interview for his own self-serving interest. A lot of Ronaldo fan girls and fanboys can't handle that and seem to think it was all because of Ronaldo. The guy has done this for his own self-interest and his own issue with the club, when in reality it wasn't Man United's fault he didn't leave in the summer. It was his fault because nobody wanted him. I know United came out and said he wasn't for sale, But I think if somebody had came in and said, we'll take him off your hands, United would have said, yeah, have him. Because Ten Hag would have said, yes, have him. And United have backed the manager, which is what you should do, because the manager is the biggest person at the club. No matter how long they've been there, you back the manager. When a player becomes bigger than what they think is bigger than the club, that's when they shouldn't be there anymore. And this is why Ronaldo's done this. So at the minute, I'm very annoyed with him, but he's not going to care about that, obviously. But I'm not happy with the way he's conducted himself and the disrespect he's shown towards the club, the fans, the manager, and previous personnel of Man United. But I'm happy he's shone a light on the Glazers and the infrastructure issues. But let's not pretend he's done that for the right reasons. He's done that for himself and nobody else.
I think that's a very fair comment. I honestly wish he never came back. The hat-tricks, the last-minute goals are all forgotten of how he behaved the last 6 months. It's destroyed it for me. Rooney apologised.
Yeah,
brilliant comparison, because I know one Twitter account that seems to be... I'm not going to mention names because it doesn't really make sense. But there was a Twitter account. I think you might know which one I'm talking about. But he said, well, Ronaldo's done the same thing that Rooney did. Well, not really.
Rooney's the same thing Rooney did, though.
Rooney's criticisms at the time were actually very... It wasn't calculated by Rooney. It was actually right at the time. He was spot on. Like, yes, we sold arguably our best player, apart from Rooney. Even though he went to City and he mugged off Sir Alex Ferguson, we didn't even bother to sign Carlos Tevez permanently. We should have signed Carlos Tevez and got Berbatov at the same time. When we got Berbatov, we should have made Carlos Tevez permanent because he was perfect for us in that team. I think Rooney would have been less angry with the way that Sir Alex Ferguson was not being backed if we had actually signed Tevez as well after Ronaldo left, but he didn't. We went and got Obertan, we went and got Valencia, and we got Michael Owen. Only one of those three worked out, and that was Valencia. Rooney's comments were about the fact that we weren't reinvesting the team properly. It was just going downhill. We were fortunate to get Van Persie, the last world-class talent that you could possibly say under Sir Alex Ferguson. Van Persie was the last world-class signing he ever made. Didn't get that, apart from... And Rooney thought, well, what am I supposed to do? I can't just stay here. I can't just take this team on my own. I may as well just voice my criticism. If I want to leave, I want to leave. But he came back and made the comments, and the fact that he apologised is completely right. And this is completely true. This is completely true. Ronaldo's went about it differently. He did not go about the manner that Rooney did. At least Rooney's comments at the time were actually genuine. Where Ronaldo, yes, he aired comments about like the club, like facilities not being where it should be. But then all his comments and his points were immediately destroyed the minute he started talking about disrespect from certain individuals. That completely derails. That completely derails your point altogether.
Yeah, 100%. And the Ronaldo thing isn't the same at all. And I think I do know which account it was, but it wasn't the same thing at all. And it's just the fact that there was such a better way of doing it for Ronaldo, really. One of them, I saw one person say he should have gone on the overlap with Gary Neville. That would have been something. Whereas instead, a pundit has criticised him and he's completely blanked him and then called him a rat to Piers Morgan. Like, the disrespect is ridiculous, and he can't handle criticism. And I just find that really bizarre for a 37-year-old man who is clearly acting like a 12-year-old. And I'm really getting sick of people defending it, because the thing is, two statements can coexist. You can be fuming with some of the things he said, but you can also agree with some of the things he said. But ultimately, you should disagree with the fact that he's done it he's done the interview in the first place. He could have still spoke out against the Glazers, because we've all been calling out for somebody active to speak about it. We can't go, oh, I wish somebody would speak out about it, and then when somebody does, we go, oh, well, we already knew. I'm seeing that a lot. We did already know, but it's still good that someone's called it out. Ultimately, it can coexist that you're really annoyed with him for doing the interview and showing the disrespect he did, but you can also be happy with the fact that he's actually said something about the Glazers. But ultimately, it comes down to the fact that the disrespect is shown as a whole to Man United in so many different aspects of the club is wrong. And the reason why he's done it is because he wanted out of the club, because he wasn't playing, because he couldn't handle the fact that the club was better without the team. Was better with him not in it. Yeah. He was given He was given the armband. I think he started 3 games in a row.
He did, yeah.
And he didn't perform well. He just didn't perform well enough. The stats were all there to see. And I'm not a big person on all these stats, but the stats were all there to see. And we performed better as a team with not Ronaldo in it, which is why Ronaldo wasn't in it. And when he did play, he didn't score. Or he was missing sitters. He didn't take his opportunity when he was in the squad. His idea of I should be in the team is because I'm Cristiano Ronaldo. And ultimately, when you're a 37-year-old who's very nearly 38, that isn't how it works anymore. Football should be a meritocratic thing where if you work hard, you get a chance, and if you play well, you stay in the team. It's as simple as that. Ronaldo didn't play well enough, which is why he didn't stay in the team, and he can't handle that fact. And if that's how you want to act and how you want to behave, then it's good that you're not in the club, because the reality is he said he's an example for younger players. And in some aspects he is, in the way he eats and how he lives his life. But he's leaving early twice and refusing to come on and do your job. Is that setting an example for younger players? No, of course it isn't. So a lot of the stuff he said contradicted himself. The disrespect he shown was awful. The fact that he did the interview with that person is even worse. At the end of the day, he has tarnished his legacy, and I reckon the legacy will be fine in a few years. But right now, I think a lot of people will feel very cold towards him, and I think there will be a lot who probably don't forget what he's done. Personally, I'd like to think in a few years I'll just go, do you know what? It was awful. He shouldn't have done it, but the happiness he brought me as a Man United player on the pitch back when he was here the first time, and in sometimes the second time, I'd probably rather remember that than this interview.
Yeah. I think this is a fair comment. Just in response to yourself, I think this is fair from Jarvis. He's not that harsh on Ronaldo. He thinks the interview was a Piers Morgan controversy, and Ronaldo's poor English took away a lot of the fine print of what he was trying to say. It's possible. Context is always key. I think that's fair. But I just also agree with Callum that I think there's a time and a place and there's a moment. This could have been done after he'd actually physically left the club. I think he could have left the club and then just done the interview. I think it's purely just because the World Cup is finally here. That United aren't playing games. United are done for this. Like until we go away and do pre-season, a second pre-season during the mid break. It's timed perfectly for him. It's calculated in that way. But if anything, it has also reiterated the fans. At least we know whether he's leaving or not. At least he's still reminded that there were issues with the club that cannot be ignored. But then just to change things around. But it's simple as that. This is a question.
Definitely.
This is a good question. Callum, and this is him actually saying, can you agree though? So he wants you to agree. Ronaldo's a football and Real Madrid legend, but I don't think he's a United legend. And when people ask me, there'd be 10 players I'd name before him easily.
Yeah.
So we'll end on this.
I mean,
Ronaldo a legend to you? I definitely think he definitely is a Real Madrid legend. I say he's a United great. Legend is so context. I think could you still put him as a legend? I think it'd be harsh to say no, but
I think
legends get so.
You play Football Manager, don't you, Reece?
And I played football as well, yeah.
So on one of the pages, it has all the club information, and it's the best way I always describe this. There's legends, icons, and favoured personnel. In the 3 column. If I was to split, I mean, it's a Football Manager reference. So if you don't play it, it's basically in 3 categories. I wouldn't put him as a United legend. Like Jarvis said, there's loads of players that put ahead of him. George Best, Dennis Law, Bobby Charlton, Paul Scholes, right? All those, Roy Keane. They're all legends of the club. I reckon it in the end he'll be remembered fondly, but the word legend is probably banded her out a bit too much, to be honest. He's definitely United great, and he'll be always remembered for the good he's done for the club, I think. But I think he's probably United great, like a bit of an icon at the club. But he's never going to be one who gets mentioned in a statue. Like if he could be spoken about as a statue outside the ground, then I'd be like, yeah, you're a legend. Roy Keane should have a statue at United. Like he's the epitome of what United are about.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say Ronaldo's a legend per se.
I think that's very fair, and that's something that we can certainly something we can end on. But I have one last question before we go. And this is to everyone, as well viewing. Thanks to everyone that has watched, of course, tonight. Get Callum from Stretford Paddock back on again, 100%, and I'll be getting him back on my shows as well, which is on Saturday at 4, weekly steel chair. But I wanted to ask you as well, between now and the end of the season, if you could see one thing change, bar obviously the ownership is the one obvious change that we'd like to see, but if you would like to see one change happen between now and the end of the season at the club, what would that be? And we'll end on that.
Our league position. I'd rather be higher up the table.
I think that's
our league position. In terms of the actual club itself, obviously the ownership, and a couple of signings maybe in January. That's what I'd want to change. Other than that, I think everything seems to be ticking along.
Yeah,
100%. Different performances, but I don't think we'll get that a lot. I think we'll see a few hiccups along the way still, to be honest, which is why I think the league position will be the most important, because if we can perform the way we have been with the occasional slip up and get in the top 4, a season had gone by and we can look at progressing even further next year, whether that be a trophy at the end of this season or next season. I think that would be the league position would be number one thing, and then a couple of signings throughout January or the summer.
Yeah, I'm on the same lines, and ownership change definitely is for me. Apart from that, hopefully we win a trophy. We might not, but I hope we do.
The ownership change, though, Reece, I obviously want that, but the thing is, people seem to be saying a whole lot about Abu Dhabi and stuff, and I really want people to be wary of it, because they aren't the blueprint of what a good owner is. The number one thing we have to remember is we want good owners, not just new owners. They have to be good owners. They have to have the club as priority, not money. I understand it's still a business and investment will be needed, and they will want to see some kind of return on that. But Man United needs to be put first, and the fans need to be put first. And I don't just want someone from the Middle East coming in because of a sports washing thing that he wants to use Man United for. I do not want that. Good owners aren't just Man City and Newcastle and PSG and those likes. They aren't the blueprint of a good ownership. £1.5 billion has been taken out of Man United over the past 17 years. That's how bad our owners are. We need better owners that just put the club first, but we've also got to do the right research and make sure that they aren't just somebody new. They need to be the right people who have the right interests at heart, not anyone from Abu Dhabi because they want to distract from the issues that they have, which is why I think Jim Ratcliffe is probably a lot of people's number one choice.
He's mine for definitely. He's my number one choice.
I've even seen possibilities of Facebook or Amazon trying to buy Man United. Look, billionaires is an inherent problem politically with billionaires, and there's really no point getting into that. But we need to make sure that in terms of a football side of things, these new owners have to put Man United first, not their own pockets, and not a sports washing regime. They have to be Man United. A Man United fan would be ideal for Jim Ratcliffe. They have to put the fans and have the fans involved in decisions, and they have to put the club at its heart and the number one priority. And I do genuinely believe that will probably most likely be Jim Ratcliffe. And there's a lot of talk that he's ready to table a bid. So if that's the case, then hopefully it's a quick sale and we can look at a new stadium, because the new stadium for me, with the land around Old Trafford and me not living too far away and awaiting a possible season ticket, that ground being completely renovated and making it the best and having the area around the land completely renovated would make the experience as a Man United fan as a whole so much better as well. So I hope it gets done swiftly and quickly, but we've also got to make sure it's the right person as well, or or whoever it is.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I completely agree. One thing's for sure, Ratcliffe is my top choice, and for those exact reasons. If someone from Abu Dhabi came in, I'd love to deal with it, but I would expect they show interest in the club, not interest of just purely, sorry, Keane, but I'm saying it because I know you're in the live chat, purely fucking things up for my own personal well-being. I just want to enjoy the fact that I love it. I love the fact that I'm a United fan. We're all United fans. We love the club first and foremost. We want somebody who comes in and actually shows they give a damn and they care. If it's Ratcliffe, great. he can get more involved with the club in that sense. I would love that. We'll see how it goes. But before we do go, I will. There's 2 comments. I'll end on Keane's comment, but this one's funny from Billy. Andrew Tate was linked before that had to be a City fan joking. That's if you can find one. And football finance expert Kieran Maguire will be live on the Weekly Armchair noon tomorrow. So that is certainly
very good. He's brilliant, Kieran
I,
Maguire as well. So I'll tune into that. Make sure everyone does tune into that because Kieran Maguire is very good.
Absolutely. And I know you put in the private chat. Don't worry, I was going to ask you about your socials, but you also like to plug your blog. Fire away. Where can we find you? All the stuff involved. Where can we find you?
Obviously, my Twitter's there, so find me there on Twitter @_Callum Stone. I moan about Man United, the World Cup being in Qatar, and the Tories. So hopefully that entertains you enough. But I do write my own stuff as well at theunitedroad.com. There is a link in my Twitter as well if you want to take a look at it. I actually released a new blog last night regarding Ronaldo and the Glazers. So if you want to give that a read, I'd really appreciate it. Let me know if you like it. And if you do like it, give it a retweet. Even if you don't like it, give it a retweet. I'm trying to sort of get back involved with the writing side of things as well as being on YouTube and various other outlets. So, but they're the 2 main places to find me. Hopefully you enjoy all that stuff, and I hope you enjoyed tonight's show as well. Yeah,
it's certainly been good. I've certainly enjoyed it. And we'll get you back on. Definitely get you back on more shows, mate. It's good to have you, and also get you back on mine as well. Billy's actually said he's actually read it as well, and he'll retweet for you. So there you go.
Really appreciate that, mate.
And Jarvis as well. Thanks very much, buddy. That's certainly a pleasure.
Nice to be Jarvis.
Absolutely. So 12 o'clock tomorrow, Keane and Kieran. That'll be a good stream. But this has been Devil's Advocate on the Weekly Armchair Sports Talk. I've been Reece, your host this evening. This is Callum from Stretford Paddock. I just had to get that in one more time just for the chills, the comedy, and obviously shoot from the hip. Up fucking Reds. Bye, guys, and thanks for watching.